Alright, so you've probably seen this thing your entire life, right? They put it on classroom walls, cereal boxes, and even health class PowerPoint presentations. But here's the kicker, the food pyramid, it's all bullshit. It wasn't built to keep you healthy, it was built to keep money flowing in certain industries' pockets. So let's unpack this bullshit, dive into history, and expose the lies that we've all literally have been fed. Let's start in the 1940s. The sound of big bands filled the clubs, America's military-industrial complex was just being born, rationing was in full swing, and the United States government was in the process of putting everyone of Japanese descent into concentration camps. Yeah, it was a wild and chaotic time. Food shortages were hitting pretty hard. The government had to come up with a way to keep people fed while still prioritizing the war effort. So enter the Basic 7. This guide wasn't about optimizing health. It was about survival, keeping people from malnutrition, while rationing certain essentials like sugar, meat, and canned goods. It had categories like leafy greens, potatoes, and it even had an entire section for butter and margarine. That might sound random, but it was all about what was cheap, available, and calorie dense. But here's the kicker. They said eat whatever the fuck you want as well. That's like having a nutritionist tell you, just wing it. It wasn't grounded in science. It was a wartime fix, plain and simple. However, after the war, instead of building something better, corporate interests decided to take over and make sure the guidelines worked for them, not us. Fast forward to 1970s Sweden, they were dealing with skyrocketing food prices. Enter Anna-Britt Agnsäter, who was a home economist and head of the consumer education department for the Swedish Cooperative Union. She stepped in with a groundbreaking idea. She created the first ever food pyramid, showing what to eat and how much of it. Grains and dairy were at the bottom, fruits and vegetables were in the middle, and the meat was all the way up at the top. It was simple, effective, and practical. But when the USDA brought the pyramid concept to the United States, they didn't adopt Agnsäter's clear, consumer-focused approach. Instead, they did what America does best and made it a battleground for lobbyists, letting industries distort it into something almost completely unrecognizable. Then you have the 1992 food pyramid. It wasn't designed for you, it was designed for profits. The dairy industry pushed hard to secure its own section, even though cultures thrived for a very, very long time without dairy. The wheat industry lobbied for 6 to 11 servings of grains a day, knowing that that in turn was going to sell more bread, cereal, things like that. Now let's talk about the nutritionists behind the original pyramid. Louise Light, who led the team at the USDA, wanted to focus on fresh fruits, vegetables, and lean protein. But by the time the pyramid was released, lobbyists from the processed food industry had torn her version apart. They pushed white bread and sugary snacks, basically things that she wanted to limit, to the base of the pyramid. Now, when I say sugary snacks, even though sugar has its own section at the top, there are actually certain processed foods that kind of have sugar hidden in them. Now, subsidies also played a role. Corn, wheat, and soy were heavily subsidized, making them cheap to produce. That created a system where processed foods packed with these ingredients dominated not only the market, but also our diets. Here's the thing about fat. Your brain literally runs on it. Fat provides energy and is a critical part of the cell membrane, allowing those neurons to communicate effectively. It's kind of like the premium fuel your brain needs to stay sharp. Hormones? Same exact thing. Fats are essential for producing hormones like estrogen and testosterone. Without healthy fats, your body struggles to regulate everything from metabolism to mood. And let's not forget vitamins A, D, E, and K. They also need fat to be absorbed. So cutting out fat isn't just unnecessary, it's actually a little dangerous for you. Now, let's talk about when everyone went low fat. It was a big thing in the 80s. Oprah wheeled out a red wheelbarrow full of fat. I forget how many pounds it was, but it was supposed to like represent how much fat she lost doing some diet. And then after she did that, everyone started to go low fat. Food companies started to panic because fat makes everything taste good. So without it, they had to replace that flavor with something. Enter sugar-free products loaded up with maltodextrin and artificial bullshit. Maltodextrin, for example, spikes your blood sugar faster than regular sugar does, making it just as bad, if not worse, for your health, especially if you're diabetic. So while people thought they were making healthier choices, they were actually just swapping out one problem for another. Now, the USDA has this new thing called MyPlate as a modern alternative to the food pyramid. It's this plate graphic here that's supposed to show you how to balance your meals, but here's the catch. Still got grains lumped together all in one, including the ultra-processed grains. It's basically like the same old advice, just repackaged with a new marketing campaign to look fresh and brand new. In fact, it's actually not. It's just the same shit. So one of the organizations I would like to call out is the Sugar Research Foundation, now called the Sugar Association. Back in the 1960s, they actually paid Harvard scientists $50,000 to blame fat for heart disease instead of sugar. And we've been living with that fallout ever since. And then there's the tobacco companies. When cigarette sales started to drop, they ended up pivoting over to food. Companies like Philip Morris ended up buying up Kraft and General Mills, and R.J. Reynolds bought up Nabisco. Using their expertise in addiction, they actually created these hyper-palatable foods. Think chips, cookies, and fast food. These things basically hit your brain's reward system like you're just hitting a slot machine. These foods were engineered to keep you hooked, just like cigarettes were engineered to keep you smoking. And let's not forget high fructose corn syrup. Thanks to government subsidies, corn was cheap, and companies used it in everything as a sweetener, from soda to salad dressings to ketchup. The result? Sugar consumption skyrocketed, along with it rates of obesity and diabetes. Now let's get into a little detail about canola oil. It comes from a type of rapeseed that was historically used for industrial purposes like lubricants. Modern canola oil was bred to have lower levels of erucic acid, making it technically safe for human consumption. But here's the problem: it's still heavily processed, often involving industrial solvents like hexane. Nothing about that screams healthy at all whatsoever. If you want good fats, stick to olive oil, coconut oil, and butter. Now, not all modern substitutes are bad for you. Monk fruit sweeteners, stevia are great alternatives that don't come with the same risks like maltodextrin. They're great for cutting back on sugar without sacrificing taste. So here's my rule. If it didn't exist 100 years ago, look at it with skepticism. Stick to whole, minimally processed foods, and always read the labels. If it's full of ingredients that you cannot pronounce and looks like it has more chemicals than a fucking shampoo bottle, just leave it on the fucking shelf. So there you have it. The food pyramid wasn't about health, it was about money. But now you know the truth, and you could take back control of what you're putting on your plate. If you found this helpful, or you just love calling out businesses on their bullshit, shady practices, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep getting it together one day at a time.
Food can build a new America.